I am on Interconnected the Tangle as a researcher. And what that position looked like is I started a couple weeks before the rest of the team, just proofreading last year's survey, coming up with new questions, new ideas, and making a glossary of terms that showed up in the survey, and also a collection of resources. So as our respondents were going through, if they were triggered by one of the questions and needed like immediate access, or if after the fact they wanted to look more into resources, they had that readily available. And then the terms were just to make sure that everything in the survey was like readable. And then from there, we sent the survey out. It was out for about 5 days. We read through all the responses, separate of like any identifying factors, and then pulling out any trends, any significant quotes, and just anything that stuck out to us from those responses.
The research was mostly based on an IRB-approved survey. So my co-researcher Carrington made the survey in the earlier weeks, and then when I came on, it was about going through the data. So I was able to look at people's responses to the questions that were on the survey and sort of get statistics about who said what and why and stuff like that, and take a deeper dive into their narratives. I have a lot of experience in mental health work. I am a crisis counselor for Crisis Text Line of America, and I'm also a sexual assault victims advocate. So I work a lot with populations that deal with mental health and mental illness. So looking at that wasn't anything super unusual for me, but trends that I did isolate were that people that struggle with one thing, pretty much all of them also struggle with something else. It's not like I only have depression, I only have anxiety. It's like those two are brother and sister. They're always somewhat together sometimes.
People struggled with multiple things. It wasn't just this is my sole challenge or sole issue. It's like if somebody selected one challenge, there's probably 2 or 3 more that they also selected. And another trend, the highest challenge overall was anxiety. I wasn't expecting that. When I was reading, I could only read in 30-minute chunks because people were being so vulnerable and sharing so much, and I was having to take a step back and care for my own mental health, because reading people's stories like that, it's you don't really see that walking down the street. You don't see what everybody's going through. People put on a smile, how are you doing? Fine. But when you actually sit down and open up, it's a lot to take in at once. And being on this project has given me a lot of insight and a lot of vocabulary that I can go back and break down into simpler terms, so it's really helped me a lot. And the reason I'm so passionate about mental health is because no one in my family or no one really in my hometown that I grew up with personally speaks out about it or spoke out about it as I was growing up. And when I came to college and started having my own experiences, I was like, this is pretty impactful and pretty significant. I'm realizing around me, and I want to be that voice for Anderson, my hometown where I'm from, my family, my friends, my team, to speak out about mental health, share resources. Mental health is getting talked about more, and I love that. But at the end of the day, if you don't even know what mental health is, it's kind of just being said, and nothing really practical is coming about.
I think nowadays sometimes people get mixed up with becoming aware of mental illness and then glorifying it, One of the most common things we found in the survey is that people who are experiencing these things, even though we have 86 survey responses, all of them say they feel alone, even though they have people struggling with the same exact thing. Whereas in the play, we had those community sections where it's you're not alone, you're struggling with these things, but there are people around you to support you.
I feel like this is a pretty common in the mental health world, but one simple phrase would be that you're not alone. Interconnected literally means you have your best friends, you have your parents, you have your village of people, so lean on them. Take that first step in reaching out to someone saying, hey, this is what I'm going through. I'm sure 9 times out of 10 people would love to support you.
When you work as a crisis counselor and you ask that question, what's going on, that narrative starts. And that is exactly what we got with the survey responses. So it was very, very similar, except for the fact that I can't talk back, It was interesting to just focus on that starting point rather than trying to reach an end point with them.
I think the survey alone impacted everyone who took it, because they were able to see somebody's actually interested in what I'm doing, how I'm feeling. Somebody's actually interested in creating a beautiful work of art out of that. And they take that next step in coming to the show, they can kind of see their challenges brought to life, which I think that's the beauty of art, the beauty of dance, is really storytelling. And I think the whole immersive experience, the idea of being in the set, is going to be pretty powerful, because you're not just watching it, you are a part of the show. And it's telling your story, so you should be a part of the show.
Something that I did find interesting was in our visual colors representation study, I never really thought of how people view their mental illness on a physical scale, but you'd think sadness being blue. A majority of the people that assigned a color to things like sadness assigned it as gray. People who talked about mania and stuff like that assigned it to things like neon yellow, neon colors. and it's just something that I had never personally thought about, but it was very interesting to see how multiple people who probably don't know each other can come to the same conclusion about physical representations of their mental health.
Throughout the responses, we would go through and pull out any physical traits, any physical manifestations, any movements that people identified with, and we sent that to Robin, the choreographer. So I'm pretty sure that'll show up on stage and some of the symptoms people are describing.
The most straightforward representation that I found was about the sort of mania, overstimulation, stuff like that, and it came through with Mylar. So Mylar has some pretty crazy colors. I definitely thought it was a really accurate representation of what people were feeling when they're feeling overstimulated, when they're feeling manic, stuff like that. So to be honest, at the beginning I was like, how are dancers gonna take my research and do something with it? I didn't understand it. But after watching this whole process develop and them create the dances with the costume and the lighting and the meaning, it really made something cool and something tangible. The overall message still gets across, and I think it's super cool. No one can say for sure whether it's an accurate representation of someone's struggle because everyone has a different struggle. But overall, I think it really did bring awareness.
I would tell people who feel like the show is inaccessible to be open-minded, because you never know how it could impact you if you already go into the show thinking this is going to be above my head, I don't know what's happening. If you go in with an open mind and really just appreciate the work for what it is, the dancers themselves are being vulnerable by executing this choreography. So, and then after the fact, not just watching it and walking away, but reflecting on what was the message here, how can I apply it to my life, and why is it important? Walking up, not just walking away, but taking something with you.
Of course you can view anything passively. To be honest, with most dance things that I've watched, I've definitely viewed it passively because I don't understand dance, but with this, and people have different interpretations. Like, in order to arrive at that interpretation, you really have to think about it. So I think you do have to actively view it, but at the same time, you can come to any conclusion. People should view others who have struggles as people, This is meant for all audiences, whether they struggle with mental illness or not. I think this show is like, hey, you're not alone. Other people know what you're going through, and this is how we're portraying it on a widespread scale.